Call roll, please. Noblin, Ann Hayes.
Present.
Ron Bell. Sue Ford.
Here.
Ted Miller.
Present.
Norma Turner. Here. Maggie Ross. Steve Burke.
Here.
Linda Barkhouse.
Here.
Len Wiggins. Len Wiggins.
Here.
Bonnie Beauvais. Barbara Christensen. Present. Rod Fleck.
Here.
Mike Doherty. Don Corson.
Here.
Thank you. You have the agenda in front of you. Is there any modifications or additions to the agenda?
For the record,
Yes, sir.
For the record, Nola Judd's into the room.
Yes.
Oh, you had to make a big deal out of it, didn't you?
I assume that Trish saw that, she went by. Okay. Any modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, then I assume by consensus you approve the agenda as submitted. Is that correct? Okay. Minutes. Did you get the updated minutes?
No, but were there significant changes, or they?
Just proofreading. And nothing in off of Lynn's name and.
Why, I didn't see anything on there you needed to proofread, Trish. Thank you.
So while people are reviewing the minutes, maybe we can have Trish go over the correspondence for us, please. We'll come back to minutes after you have a chance.
Email from Stephanie Noblin with the link to the May 4th meeting. An email from Ted Miller about the narrative on the Clark County Home Rule Charter. An agenda item summary from Monday, May 11th. Norma presented to the Board of Commissioners a request for additional funding. A link from Brian Maureen regarding Osceola County set to take on banks due to finding so much recorded fraud. Ed Bowen commented on the draft questionnaire using the online link and sent a separate one to Sue Ford with his changes to the questionnaire red line. I believe Sue forwarded to the commission.
Yeah. Thank you. Does the commission need any more time to be reviewing the minutes? Or are you ready to adopt them? Still need to read them. Okay, shall we move on to public comment and come back to the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, so we will move on to public comment. Remind the public that it's a 3-minute timeline, and hopefully you've signed up. So let's see, Ron, could you bring me up the sign up, please? Thank you. It's our biggest sign-up sheet in the packet. Okay. First person is Vicki Roden.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Vicki Rudin, 1002 Straightview Drive, Port Angeles. Although I've been unable to attend any of your meetings up to now, I am appreciative of the ability to review the agenda packets online and to watch the actual meetings via the YouTube videos. Thank you for keeping the process as transparent as possible. As a result of that review, I wish to simply make 2 points this evening. First, I was very surprised by an action taken, or I should say not taken, at your May 4th meeting. When you were selecting the proposals which would be addressed in the 3 upcoming public hearings, you chose to not include the question of the position of Director of the Department of Community Development, should it return to being an appointed position. Some among you have said it was unnecessary to ask that question again because it had been presented to the voters in 2002 and again in 2007. And yet you did decide to place other issues on the public hearings list that had been considered before. For example, the frequency of charter review commissions and the election of county commissioners by district. Why did you opt to lessen the importance of the director of DCD position? In my review, I noted at your first round of public hearings, numerous speakers and emailers asked that the DCD position come to your attention. I expect that they are feeling rather disenfranchised after reading about the results of your last meeting. And to my second point, I want to add my voice to those who believe the DCD position should be appointed and that you should give the voters the opportunity once again to reconsider the decision they made in 2002. The political and development situation in Clallam County was different at that time. Many of you surely remember the animosity that was felt toward the DCD administration, as well as the impact of state and federal legislation, which made many residents upset with land use regulators in general. I believe our county was lucky that the DCD directors elected in the next two elections worked out as well as they did. Yet both attested that their position should have been appointed. I also believe many questions were raised about the qualifications and abilities of the director who was not re-elected in 2014.
So Vicki, if you can
I'll
line
add
up,
to that.
thank you.
The current director, during her campaign for election, also indicated her belief that it should be an appointed position. The majority of my professional career was spent as a city planner and city administrator, so I am not speaking from an uninformed position. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person to speak is Charles Crane.
Can I have a question, please?
Not during the public comment.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Charles Crane. I live at 336 East Ridgey in Port Angeles. I'd like to thank the
Could you
Charter
put
Review
the
for...
microphone up?
Oh, yeah. I'd like to thank the Charter Review for letting me bring attention to what I feel is a very dedicated group of people, the Justice Restoration Group. We don't want to hinder, alter, or even make light of the government. That we're not a bunch of rebels, but we did speak about this grand jury. It's very important. I'd just like to remind you that the grand jury is the people's jury, and it sidesteps a lot of established representations that you have to go through to get to be heard. Any person can go to a grand jury, be heard, make a statement, let their complaint be made, and without any bias of any kind, the jurors decide whether something should go forward based on findings. They don't judge. That's for the courts. And it's important for the people who have paid for that office to be able to operate in it. And more people should be made aware of it. And I believe that that going forward would be a great improvement to the current system of justice we have in this country. It's the people's obligation to listen to the people who have a complaint, and the justice to be served in whatever manner goes forth from there. The grand jury is the original way to process a person's rights and make sure that justice is served. And that's the benefit of having one. I could have spoken better, but I'm not so good at public speaking like I used to be. But thanks for hearing me. And again, I have great respect for this group. There's something like people that work with. Their diligence needs to be recognized. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yours as well. Thank you.
And the next person is Alan Anderson.
Hi, I'm Alan Anderson. grand jury protects the potential defendant's reputation in case the jury does not decide to indict. According to the Find Law website, the grand jury proceedings are kept in strict confidence. This serves two purposes. One, it encourages witnesses to speak freely and without fear of retaliation. And two, it protects a potential defendant's reputation in case the jury does not decide to indict. How does the state of Washington address this issue statutorily? According to RCW 102790, every member of the grand jury shall keep secret whatever he, she, or any other grand juror has said, and how he, she, or any other grand juror has voted. This is just one more reason I would encourage the Charter Review Commission to move the grand jury concept forward for the community's consideration in the November election. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Judy Handgartner.
Good evening. My name is Judy Handgartner. I live at 1815 East 4th Street, Port Angeles, and I am here speaking on behalf of the Justice Restoration Group of Collin County. The Collin County Grand Jury proposal was given to you at the last Charter Review meeting, May 4th. I will refer to number 4, Grand Jury in Collin County Pros page. If the grand jury chooses to indict, the trial will most likely begin faster. Without a grand jury indictment, the prosecutor has to demonstrate to the trial judge that he or she has enough evidence to continue with the case. However, with the grand jury indictment, the prosecutor can skip that step and proceed directly to a trial. This would certainly decrease the court cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Steve Reynolds. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Steve Reynolds. I live at 407 North Lees Creek, Port Angeles. I'm also speaking about the grand jury. I was raised at the last meeting. Questions were asked about, where else there is a grand jury. And going on grand juries of the United States, Wikipedia, there are 28 states plus the District of Columbia that employ, as a matter of state law, some form of grand jury. These states include Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Missouri, Mississippi, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and West Virginia. So there is evidence of it out there. It is state law in those states. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brian Maureen.
Good evening, all. I've heard the grand jury brought up before by some people as the concept. I think if we look back into our Constitution and the Fifth Amendment, you will see that our forefathers' intention was to establish grand juries in all counties. My one question to everybody here tonight is, where does a person go when he sees crimes being committed against the people of their county? After 2.5 years of rattling doors in this county, I got no reaction. If we had a grand jury, I wouldn't have to spend 2.5 years doing it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And next is Dan Bateman. Is that correct?
Bateman.
Bateman, okay.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm Dan Bateman. I live at 207 Walcott Street here in Port Angeles. Just a little side note, I am running for city council. That's not what I'm here for. I want to also speak very briefly on behalf of the grand jury system. I've seen occasions when there are people that have seen something that is wrong that they feel needs to be addressed, and sometimes they fear repercussions. It may be something at work, something they see somewhere here in this town or across this county, and it's very difficult for them to find a safe place to bring this up, to be considered seriously. If there's a crime that needs to be addressed, I believe the grand jury would give people a place to go where those concerns that they're aware of can be addressed, and if there's a crime, something be done to fix it without repercussions on the person who's trying to report the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Noblin? From behind the camera to in front of the camera, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I want to talk about the benefits of the grand jury to the prosecuting attorney's office. Because you may have wondered about that a little bit. So I have 2 points I want to make. Point 1, having a Clallam County grand jury can prevent conflicts of interest for the prosecuting attorney. And that can be a good thing for the prosecuting attorney. For instance, there could be a case that might be awkward for him to handle in the initial discovery period. For example, if a citizen were to bring evidence of a crime being committed by an elected or a public official or a public figure, it may be difficult for the prosecuting attorney to proceed on that discovery that might be necessary. Wouldn't it be a benefit to the prosecuting attorney to have a grand jury who reviews all the evidence, requests all the witnesses, and either indicts or does not indict? It puts him at arm's length with the possible defendant. Point 2. This eliminates frivolous cases. And the grand jury will hear and review evidence on whether the case has merit based on presented facts and evidence gathered by the grand jury. So the grand jury does a lot of the legwork. They become an extra investigatory body. They have to do some work. So if the prosecuting attorney has a conflict in a case, he can have the grand jury look for the probable causes and then go down the proper course of action. The prosecuting attorney can also, he can send questions to the grand jury as well and ask them to investigate any matter. So I'm going to encourage you, the Charter Review Commission, to move this idea of forming a Clallam County grand jury to the public hearings, and then from that make your determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula Barnes?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paula Barnes. I live at 783 Lost Mountain Lane. I've addressed you before, and I've followed your actions on the Clallam County website and in the press. I'm disappointed that I need to be here again, but your actions relating to the Director of Community Development position have really baffled me, so here I am. When I read the May 6th article in the PDM listing the recommendations you decided were important enough to forward to the next round of public hearings, I was surprised that you rejected the concept of giving the public the opportunity to make the DCD an appointed position, as is the case in the rest of the United States. I attended the March 2nd public hearing you held in Swim, and I remember that the vast majority of the input that you received at that meeting urged this particular item be moved forward. The May 6th article caused me to wonder what else you'd heard at other meetings that caused...
That's the former speaker. You really haven't used 3 minutes.
My time is
Wow.
So you're just starting yours, so.
Yeah.
2 minutes then? Is that
No,
good?
2.5. Yeah.
The May 6th article caused me to wonder what else you'd heard at other meetings that caused you to vote down this item. So I went back through the record, and I have to tell you, I see little to no relationship between what you received through public testimony and your actions. At the Swim public hearing, 8 speakers endorsed an appointed Director of Community Development. And I should note that the minutes for that meeting are incorrect. Roger Fite and Sue Erzin each spoke in favor of an appointed DCD, but the minutes state they favored leaving this position as an elected official. You can confirm this on the video record as I did, and I urge you to correct the minutes accordingly. Anyway, I'm counting them among the 8 speakers who endorsed making the position an appointed one. Only 2 people at that meeting spoke in favor of the position being elected. At the February 25th public hearing in Forks, nobody addressed this issue. At the February 17th public hearing in Port Angeles, 2 people spoke in favor of an elected DCD. However, please note these same 2 people had already spoken to this point at the Swim hearing. One person advocated making this an appointed position, and that person had not. 29 speakers at your 3 public hearings. 9 of them, almost a third of the individuals who addressed you, spoke in favor of an appointed DCD. Only 2 favored an elected one. In reviewing the record, I also learned that you received testimony from the incumbent DCD supporting making this position an appointment, and you received an email from the first elected DCD who agreed the position should be appointed. This means you've heard from 11 different individuals, including 2 people who actually held the job, who support an appointed DCD, and you've heard from only 2 individuals who endorsed an elected one. Given the total disconnect between the testimony received and your subsequent actions, I'm wondering why anybody would bother coming to your second round of public hearings. It appears that you may have your own agenda, and you're only considering the testimony relevant if it supports that agenda. Here's another example. One single individual asked that the charter be changed to read the county would no longer cooperate with other agencies, but would coordinate with them instead. You've decided this is important enough to put forward? Really? You're kidding, right? I would certainly appreciate hearing an explanation of why you voted the way you did, and I'd like to know who voted against something that so many of us urged you to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak that didn't sign up? Oh, Dale, yeah, you were out of the room when your name. I saw your name.
Thank you. I apologize. I too am speaking in support of the adoption of a grand jury. And as I look around at these citizens who've been here for most of your meetings and have spent a lot of time and energy and effort, and most of you know I haven't been here but 3 or 4 years, and so I don't know what all the reasons are that a grand jury is necessary. But these people have lived here for a long time, and obviously they have great concern about it. My greatest concern is that the Fifth Amendment requires it. And I don't understand why you, who have been chosen as leaders of our community, are not indignant that it has been let fall by the wayside. There's not anybody supposed to be put on trial in the United States of America, much less in Cloud County, unless and until a grand jury has indicted them. Now, out of convenience, the legislature may have let this fall to the wayside, and superior courts and courts may have let it fall to the wayside because it's a little cumbersome, and it takes away a little of their power, and it takes away the prosecutor's discretion. But that's a little bit worth a little bit of problem that is offset by the adherence and the guarantee that we have a grand jury decide if we are going to be put on trial. That's not the reason they asked me to talk. I was supposed to talk about the cost savings of a grand jury, but I want you to develop a sense of indignity that it's not already in process. A part of the grand jury's savings would be that the grand jury would have its own budget, and the prosecutor's budget would not be tapped in order to do some of the discovery before a trial. Nominal cases based on scant evidence would never come upon the prosecutor's radar, freeing him up for trial duties alone. Grand jurors would alleviate the need to hire additional deputy prosecutors. Grand jurors have their own part-time attorney for guidance on the law and would not require input from the prosecutor's office. Grand jurors acting in secret preserve the prosecutor's impartiality until a decision is made whether to indict or to dismiss. If an indictment is handed up, the prosecutor will take on full bore the case, and if it is dismissed, the prosecutor may never know that the defendant was even arrested. So you do not have this automatic conflict between a person who was never indicted, but he's already run afoul of the prosecutor. Let me remind you, in Ferguson, Missouri, when the young man was shot down in the street by the police officer, there was over 70 witnesses who came to testify about that incident. Our prosecutor would not have time to go through all of those witnesses, to not only to schedule all of them and prepare time for them to come and interview each of them. A grand jury is the ideal body that would be able to do that. And also, when the grand jury makes its determination, then the prosecutor is free from the political outfall from what the decision is made by the grand jury. So, to preserve the decorum and to preserve our constitutional rights, I urge you to move this forward. Let the people decide on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else who has not signed up?
Bob Ford, Swin, Washington. I'd like to speak in favor of keeping the Director of Community Development elected for a couple of simple reasons. One, the Founding Fathers guarded against a professional class. Didn't want a professional class. You know, we have citizens, soldiers. The idea of, on one hand, saying I want democracy, and on the other hand, saying, no, I'd rather have it appointed, let's just appoint everybody. The idea that we can elect a person for 4 years is embodied in the presidency, for example. So the thing works, it has worked right along since its inception in Clallam County. I find no logical or scientific reason to change it because it has worked. No matter how many opinions there may be, there is no evidence that it doesn't work. It works just fine considering the frailty of all human beings. So I just want to be the lone voice, even though I'm outnumbered, it doesn't matter, I like that. I would encourage you to just leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Could I
Hearing
spoke-
none, I'll quote, but you've spoken once already. Thank you.
I just want to make a distinct clarification.
No, it's all right.
Okay.
Anybody else who has not spoken? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period. And we will move back to our agenda. Steve?
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the motion of last time to move forward the consideration of appointing a DCD director to the hearing process. And I believe I have standing on that because I did not vote for it last time.
Okay. Is there any second for that?
I second.
Okay. Did you vote on the prevailing side?
Yeah, no, I did not.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, I
On the
voted.
prevailing side?
I'll second, I voted.
Okay. So the motion has been made and seconded by individuals that vote on the prevailing side. Is there discussion? Ken?
Well, I think we should reconsider for the simple fact, or at least this one simple fact, that what we had agreed to do last time was to bring forward, was to look at each of the proposals and whether or not they were legitimate ballot titles to be considered. And this was the only one that I think is clearly a legitimate ballot title to be considered that was for some reason excluded.
Another comment? Glenn?
I'd just like to ask a question.
Microphone.
Oh, sure, thank you. Noble as always.
Sorry, if I can't hear, I know Trish can.
Becky, I think you mentioned that there were other issues that were not, that were not handled the same way.
Your time's up.
Sorry, we're going to get this right.
I just was wondering, the other issues that you mentioned, were they turned down twice by the voters? The other issues you mentioned that were not treated the same way as DCD director? I think one of the main reasons we thought that was the public has said no by a large plurality. And we decided, golly, are we going to go back to the mat again with the public on this one? Would it enrage the public? You turned us down twice. And it's a question.
I want, before you answer, I want to clarify that we are, as a body, not voting at this time to put anything on the ballot.
No.
We are simply voting, is this something the public would like to have a chance to talk about?
Right.
We're really just setting for public hearing, so there's a very different thing.
Right.
So anyway, answer your question, Vicki.
One of the examples I gave was the frequency of charter review commissions.
Yeah.
And each time that was on the ballot, it has changed. There's not been consistency from the very beginning.
Okay.
The other example I gave was the election of county commissioners by district. And that was defeated both times that it was on. But I understand there's validity in bringing that up again.
I see.
So,
Okay. I see. Okay.
thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Hey, Don?
The other comment there, it is not a large plurality, or whatever the word is, a whole lot of votes. We're a small county, and a few votes can change it from one percentage to another. So I think it's very, very worthwhile bringing this up again, because I think that the fact that even our current DCD director would not be able to even apply for a similar position anywhere in America needs to be brought up for vote.
Okay, John?
Just by way of the wording of what goes out to the public, would it still be at least phrased in the alternative as should the DCD director remain as an elected position, or should it be an appointed position?
Well, good question. I'd like to ask the maker of the motion. Is your intent that the question be as last time, should the DCD be appointed, or broader, should the DCD be elected or appointed?
Broader.
Yeah, my intent is that we would have discussion on both sides.
Yeah, I think that I can support that motion, yeah.
So is that your motion that
Yes.
you'd want to have considered? Okay. So the motion is to reconsider the issue of DCD, and the question would be to put out for public hearing, should the DCD position be elected or appointed? Ken?
Well, I'm not sure the motion as to whether or not to reconsider DC, it's whether to make it part of our public hearings. I mean, it could still be considered amongst this body.
Well, yes, yes.
I mean, that's what we were
Excuse me,
supposed to
yes.
be doing, not making decisions last time we met.
So you're right. The reconsideration motion is to send it out for public hearing.
Exactly.
Okay, maybe there's a different version of Roberts people are using. Because usually a motion to reconsider is done shortly after the decision. And there's 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 action items that have took place after this.
It could be done or the next day. Does not have to be in the
If it's a
same meeting.
multiple day session.
Or the next meeting.
regular meeting.
Or the
We're
next
in
regular meeting.
This is-
And then it's a motion to reconsider that you do, and then you reconsider the vote that you took.
Okay.
So it's a two-step process.
Okay, so the first step is,
The motion to reconsider.
so we need to vote on whether or not we want to reconsider, correct? Okay, so the motion on the floor is, should we reconsider the issue of sending the DCD issue out for public hearing? And if you vote yes, it means, yeah, you want to discuss putting it out to public hearing. You vote no, and you stick with what we had before. So, those in favor of reconsideration? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so now we voted to reconsider. So parliamentarians, we need to reconsider the exact same
Now it's the same motion, yeah, that's the thing, you're reconsidering the same question.
Okay, so the question that we have under reconsideration, I'm gonna get my little thing to tell what we already had that written last time. I got way too many pieces of paper here. Okay, so the motion was, should the DCD director be an appointed position? That's what we voted on last time, and so that's what we're reconsidering. So basically, by putting that out, it opens it up to discussing either view, correct? Do you want further discussion, or do you want to move to?
Well, we didn't need a motion though.
Yes.
The motion's on the
Steve's made
table.
the motion.
Yeah, the motion has to be.
It's the original motion.
Yeah, so you go back and reconsider the original motion.
So the motion that's on the table is, should we send out to public hearing, should the DCD director be an appointed position? Which allows people to come and say yes or no. Is that what we're doing? Okay, so more discussion, or do you want to vote?
Well, yeah, I just want to emphasize again, I mean, what we were supposed to be doing is bringing viable ballot measure discussions to the public hearing. And I think whether you're in favor or not, I mean, these other arguments we've heard have nothing to do with it. It's a valid ballot measure. And I think it should be discussed, because that's what we decided that public hearings were going to be about. So
Okay.
it would be a travesty to not.
Okay, Sue?
If this, excuse me, if this motion carries, the wording will remain as it is right now.
The wording will be as we voted last time.
Okay.
We're reconsidering that particular.
If we vote no, then we can resubmit the question for the public to rephrase it so that it would offer an either or. Should the DCD director be elected, or should he be appointed, or should it be changed and be appointed, we could make that change, I believe. Is that correct?
I don't know, I'll have to ask my parliamentarian. Is this motion amendable?
What I'm suggesting is if we vote this down, as it's stated, then somebody could make a motion to change the language in it to offer an either-or opportunity.
That's what I'm asking the parliamentarian, if this motion is amendable, because you then could just simply amend the motion on the table, so that the question would move from should the DCD director be an appointed position to what I hear you say is you'd like the question to be broader, should the DCD director be an appointed or an elected position, let people decide which. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, yes, I reversed that.
I was basically told we couldn't put questions like that to the public. It had to be something affirmative, not either or.
Okay.
Be a choice.
So let's go back to so we have this motion on the floor.
To read it.
Huh?
I'm trying to reread the rule.
Okay.
But that doesn't prevent us from voting.
So the motion that's on the floor, should the question that would be sent out for the public discussion, should the DCD director be an appointed position? Are you ready to vote on that one? Okay, those in favor of sending that question out for public hearing and discussion, which when you send it out allows for decision on both sides. Because you ask that question, people can get up and say, yes, it should be appointed, and somebody else can get up and say, no, it shouldn't be appointed. So we actually are opening the question up in both ways.
I'd like to make a comment first. Are we done the closing discussion?
I'm asking if you're ready to move on.
Well, I just want to make it clear that whether we let it go forward or not doesn't even necessarily mean the end of it. I mean, what we're moving forward is what's going to be publicly, are the things that we think are viable ballot measure topics to be discussed once again in a public hearing format. I mean, if it doesn't move forward, I mean, any one of us still has the right to argue it amongst ourselves for the ballot measure, right?
And I think one of the things that happens is if you move this forward, that you already, well, we've had testimony is that the overwhelming number of people that have come before us, a large percentage, said they wanted this to be appointed. So if you put that up for public hearing, you then go out and test the waters. And then you figure out, if you get overwhelming whatever, then that helps you decide whether you put it on the ballot. Whatever you put. All right, Noah?
So is the reason that this motion is on the floor because we, forget it, I lost my thought.
If the reason it is on the floor is because two people that voted on the prevailing side, which was to say no to this, have changed their mind and want to reconsider. That's why it's on the floor. And reconsideration can only be raised by those who vote on the prevailing side. And so last time they voted not to send it out, and now they decided they do think it should go out to public hearing. So, are we ready for vote? Sue?
I think that the statements and questions that are going out to the public are more general in nature, not specific ballot statements, titles at this point in time.
The coordination cooperation is very specific.
But it's not the ballot titles.
No, but that's one of the questions going out to public hearing.
Right.
Should the language be changed from cooperation to coordination, which is a very specific question.
There are many.
So I don't know if this is any more specific.
That's a change of subject matter.
No, I'm just an example. So, okay, are you ready to vote or you want more discussion? Okay, those in favor of moving to public hearing the question, should the DCD director be an appointed position, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it moves to public hearing. Thank you.
For my clarification, that was moved by Steve and seconded by Ted.
Barr.
Barr.
Ted could not second it because he didn't vote on the prevailing. So, okay, thank you. Let me go back to my agenda and see, have you had time to look at your minutes? So you're ready to vote on the minutes?
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Are you ready to vote on the minutes? Or do you, again, you ready to give me a motion to adopt them?
So moved.
Moved by Ken to adopt the minutes as submitted. Nola?
I have one question. I have to wait till after the motion is seconded.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Glenn. Your question, Nola?
The
very bottom. It says, should a new subsection be added, 11-10-40, Board of County Commissioners, review of charter review board. That's not the way it read. It read public meetings instead of review of charter to engage the public. Does that sound right?
I don't know where you are.
Bottom of the page, number 4.
Number 4, well, see, I have a different page.
It's the top of page 4.
Top of page 4?
In the email.
All right, thank you. Top of page 4 on the email version. Okay, so I think we're right.
So the way it's reading in my minutes here is that a new subsection be added, 11-10-40, Board of County Commissioner, and then that whole rest of that sentence, I think, is incorrect. It's just a duplication of that thought. But I think it should say, public meetings to engage public there instead of review of charter review board recommendations.
Yeah, it is a strange sentence because basically what it's leading into is the language that's below it. So it's the language before it that we voted on.
And I just cut and pasted it from the synopsis. That's down there, added text, that was direct in the synopsis.
What page you guys on here?
Well, do you have the ones that came in the email? Yeah. Okay, then it's the top of page 4, number 4. Should a new subsection be added? 11.10.40, Board of County Commissioners review of charter review board recommendations. That would be the title, and this is the language that explains it. Yeah, so that's actually what it said. That was the recommendation from the subcommittee. It was trying to give some more weight to.
I was just trying to make that sentence make sense.
Okay. You just need to get rid of it. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I really, no, it is a little confusing, but it actually is what came out of the committee, subcommittee. That language came out of the subcommittee.
Right, it did.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
We need to send that subcommittee back.
Okay. All right. So anybody, any other questions? Hearing none, you ready to adopt the minutes? Those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Now, the executive committee meeting minutes, which we sent out to you, and attached to those minutes was the questionnaire. Oh, there we are. Okay. So 2-4, Barb Christensen and I met. We reviewed the questionnaire, made a few changes, and I'm hoping that what I sent out is what we decided. We did get 3 print quotes, 2 here in Port Angeles, 1 in Wim, and the one that we're going to go with was so low, I wrote back and said, are you going to print on 2 sides of the page? And he said, yeah. So the cost, our total cost is going to be for the printing, and I'll get to the budget in just a second. Steve has worked on SurveyMonkey, and that will cost $300 for a month. And Steve and Trish, as we speak, created a link so that the questionnaire that you have in front of you that go online, we will have a specific link for that. And then the daily news, and then there will be insert costs from both the daily news and for protocol. And then we wanted to know if there would be some volunteers that would pick up the 22/7 from Olympic printers and take it to the PDN office because they won't do that. So let me know if someone's willing to do that. I'll be out of town. And then protocol is going to take the responsibility of going to the printer and picking up their own and taking care of that. I did go to the county commissioners with a request to pay for this questionnaire and asked for about $3,000, and they gave us $4,900 instead. So what they did is historically, the charter review has received $10,000, and this time we only got $5,100, so they moved us back to $49,000. So that will be handy because the final vote hopefully will put out out some pros and cons, and it'll give us some money to print the pros and cons statement. So I think financially, let's get our financial report over here, that we're doing fine. And so, anything else from the executive committee that I've forgotten? Okay. And then, there's a hand. Yes, Nola?
Yeah, Norma, I took that questionnaire that you had put together and drafted one that I would like to share with you. This is taking it in a different format that I think would be easier for the public to read.
Okay, well, I want to explain a little bit why this format is the way it is there was a lot of discussion about, is the questionnaire going to be valid? And how do you ask questions? That's the way to do it. So we lucked out because I went back through the file and I found a questionnaire that was created in 1994 by a professor at Wazoo. And I just formatted it the way the professor from Washington State did it. And interesting enough, the very first question was the one we wanted to ask. Should there be 5 commissioners? Should they be appointed by district? So I can look at this, Noah. I have a tremendous time crunch.
It has the same version that you have. I just put it in table format so that when it gets ready to be tallied, it'll be right there where they can see it.
Okay.
I didn't change your wording, I just put it in a table.
I'd be happy to consider that. The time crunch is that I need to get it to the printer at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning because we are real fast, tight turnaround to get these prints out to the newspapers that have timelines. So I'd be happy to look at
all
it.
of the people on the board.
Okay.
If you would like to look at it really
Good.
quick and share with
Yeah,
you.
why don't you pass that out?
But
Because if
that's
the
more
language
than
is the
just
same,
it easier afterwards.
it might just work better. So I'll take some time to look at that. Okay. And then, you notice 8, there's a space, and that was, we wanted to leave some space because we have reports coming out of 2 committees today, and they may be wanting to move something to public hearing, so we actually would have some space to put their question in. And there's some,
there was one other thought.
yeah, we could add that one.
There was one other thought on that, Norma, and that was that the gray area here is not what was on yours. It was just to show that there are options to.
No, yeah, no, it just has
So
to
just
be.
ignore the gradient part.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ignore the gray part, and we'll do that.
We may change that later, but right now it's not that.
Okay. Okay, so, any other concerns, questions, and updates on the questionnaire? Ron?
I missed your last comment. What are we supposed to ignore?
Well, she said to ignore the gray part, which is 9 through 20.
The gray part was some of the things that came up in our discussion, but we didn't choose to move them.
Oh.
So it doesn't go on the
But it was
questionnaire.
just to give you the idea that we have more room if we need it.
Okay.
Well, one of those we just voted to go, the DCD.
Right. So we can put that one on, but then we also have room if there's some committee reports that have, remember we have 2 committees that have reports. So, any other comments on the questionnaire, Ken?
Question 5 should not say, questions should be in the affirmative. You shouldn't say, should know elected county officials. You should just simply ask, should elected county officials, et cetera, be allowed to be on the charter review committee.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's where it is.
It's affirmative. You must have an old copy.
It says, should know elected officials.
On Nola's one.
That's no, he only gets one that I did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, because when we decide that double negatives don't work. So we made an affirmative question. So the question right now reads, should elected county officials, county administrator, or charter exempt employees be allowed to serve as a member of the Charter Review Commission?
So which email did the latest?
The questionnaire you got came with the agenda packet, and it was part of the executive committee report.
See, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a partial committee. A partial questionnaire.
Well, I don't know where you're seeing.
Going to 8 questions.
There's 42, well, there's 42 pages we were sent with the packet.
Mhm.
And then page 41 in my PDF just has sample questions. And it's very different.
No, that's an old one. That was what we did last time. This was sent to you as an attachment to the executive committee report. That came out with the agenda.
And the one
That was on the agenda.
Okay,
Most
the
I gave you
packet
were highlighted things that I
I
changed, so just.
packet I downloaded, 42 pages,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get anything either.
is no, but it had the minutes at the beginning, and it has all the correspondence, it has all the things, so this is stuff for, and a draft copy of the minutes.
That's the minutes.
It was on 5/15.
Yeah,
She sent a.
okay, well, I must have got the other 5/15, because there was a set of emails, and I downloaded the one, but that's, I have something different.
Can I make up a?
Well, the reason I know that this is the edition that went out is because Ed Bowen made a comment about this very edition. So I know that this was in the official packet.
Okay.
'Cause
I
Ed
guess what I'm saying
found
is,
it.
what I have is also something that went out, that was the official packet, and it's different. I unfortunately don't have the luxury of trying to figure out which packet we're supposed to say.
You want to, you're going to print this one?
I'm fine with it.
Good, all right. Okay. So we got high-tech gets confusing. So we'll wait then to the questionnaire comes back so you can see that one. Okay, meanwhile, how about we move on and do a financial report from Barb?
Okay, I got a finance report from Deb Cook, and as of May 11th, we have spent $1,806.35. Our balance before your extra funds that you obtained was $3,293.65.
And we just paid the $300 to Survey Monkey and we'll have
So
some.
that's basically 3,000 plus your 49.
Okay, the prosecuting attorney was going to update us about how it's going with the 3 questions that he was working on.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Brian Went, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. I'm here to give a status report with respect to 3 pending questions that have been asked by this body to the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. The first one involves a question relating to whether or not the Home Rule Charter can make the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney nonpartisan. That question was submitted to the Attorney General's office, specifically the Solicitor General's office of the Washington State Attorney General. I can report back to this body that just last week they reached out to our office to make sure that they did in fact have all the materials that they were asked to review. We confirmed that they did, and based on the tenor of that email, while I can't speak for them, it does sound like they're in the final processes of wrapping up their recommendation or their opinion to this body. So we will be able to have that shortly. I can't give a specific date because that is dictated by the Office of the Solicitor General, but it is coming along. They're working on it, and it should be returned to this body shortly. The second question, actually this body submitted 2 questions at your meeting of May 4th. And those questions are, first, what is the definition of the term county as it is used in Article 6, Section 6.20? The second question, and I did take some liberty to try to draft this based on what I understood, but what ramifications, if any, does the recent decision from the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Washington in Montes versus City of Yakima, 40 F Step 3rd 1377 2014, also known as the Yakima Voting Rights Case, have on Article 2, Section 2.20? With respect to these 2 questions, I can tell you that the Prosecuting Attorney's Office is trying to finalize their response to both. The first question pertaining to the definition of a county, if I could do a rough estimation, is about 90% complete. We will definitely have that one done by your next meeting. With respect to the Yakima Voting Rights Case question, that one is a little bit more in-depth. If I were to put a rough percentage of completion, maybe half the way there. Mark will be the one who does the final review of that ultimate opinion, or both of these opinions, so really it's going to be up to Mark, but we are aiming to have those both of them done by your next meeting.
Okay, when you say our next meeting, you mean the June 1st?
Yes.
Okay, there'll be a public hearing, but we'll make time for you to give that report to us.
And just for my own edification, would you like that report done with a commentary from Mr. Nichols at the podium, or would you prefer just to have the opinion emailed to the clerk to be distributed to your membership? Would you rather see it, I guess, would you rather have it in writing, or would you rather have a formal presentation?
What do you have?
I don't know, this is my first time doing
Okay,
this.
so what would you like?
I think we need to ask questions, if we can, if we have to.
I think I would, yeah. If you'll send the written,
Yeah.
then we'll be ready to ask questions.
All right, we will do our best to have it emailed to you prior to your June 1 meeting, and whoever is going to give the presentation to us is going to have this office.
Thank you. No?
I thought that we had also sent to the prosecutors, as the Washington State Bar comment on grand juries.
No, we did not send that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now everybody has a copy of the questionnaire. Correct?
And we have that on the agenda, Norma, after the subcommittee.
Right, and I did it just because I had it because it was attached to the executive committee report. So we can do that, keep the questionnaire in mind, and deliberately put the definitive decision, acceptance of the questionnaire after the two subcommittees in case there's additional questions. So let's move to Charter Enforcement Commission Committee report. Somebody have a report from that committee?
Oh, that's me.
That's you, okay?
I did submit a written report, should have been included in the packets, and everybody got it. Okay, great. Do we need further discussion on the report? Everybody get a chance to review the report?
Why don't you just tell us?
Oh, all right. Let's see. Basically, we decided that we wanted to move it to the public hearing. We're not saying it's going to go on the ballot. We're saying we want to move it to the public hearing for comment at this time, right? Those of you on the committee?
So,
You're talking about the Enforcement Commission?
Yes.
Yeah.
Charter Enforcement Commission.
I do have one question on that.
go ahead.
Am I recognized?
Yeah.
Okay. It was talking about having the top 3 charter review commissioners, the ones that got the most votes. And not that I'm not really fond of Don, but he was the 5th or 6th down, and I've been thinking that Doherty would actually have been the 3rd position as far as number of votes.
Yeah, that was just one idea. There was lots of different ideas, and that's not necessarily what we're going to ask to move forward. It's just an example
thought that's
of
what
how
this
it would
was.
be handled. Yes, no, that was.
We looked at several different, we looked at the ombudsman, which is one individual who looks at the items, the enforcement commission, which is a commission that looks at it. So there's several different ways you can go about enforcement, but all we're saying is the concept of enforcement is worth going to public hearing.
So my question is, if it goes to public hearing, are people going to have an opportunity to review what the concept is, or what the outline is, or the proposal? Because just to throw this, send this language out for Charter Enforcement Commission, do you think that's a good idea or bad, or however you want to frame it?
Well,
But if people don't know what that is,
I think
how do you educate
I think we could frame the question a little bit to say, do you feel the need to have an enforcement body in Clallam County?
Could you work on that language?
Yeah.
Okay, if you would just kind of work on that language.
And that could cover the grand jury as well. I mean, it could cover both of these.
All right, well, that's what I think. If you work on your language, we'll come to Glenn's report and then see if there's a common question that would cover both of these.
And both of those are 9 and 10 on the one that I showed.
Okay. Glenn?
Yeah, sure. We had a meeting at my house, and we came up with the language that you mentioned earlier, which is on page 2 of this report. It says, shall a mechanism be created which would allow a community to investigate and independently determine whether a Clallam County public official has disobeyed or ignored the law, which actually brings up the grand jury option, will be discussed along with that, but there are other ways, including the ombudsman way that you mentioned as well, and there may be others that I'm not familiar with. But we made it a broad suggestion there. So that's the culmination of what the committee decided. And we tried to answer those 10 questions. Some answers we had, some we did not have, and I suspect when we have a public hearing, we're going to hear about what those questions are to those 10 questions. So we answered the ones we had answers for. Specifically, we certainly didn't have one answer from our own prosecutor yet. Like that. But anyway, we'll put light into the swamp at a public hearing.
So that committee has a specific question to ask. Is that a question that is acceptable to the other committee that met?
I think it's general enough. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think it's general enough that it would cover both.
Okay. So, Glenn, do you want to move that language so we can have a discussion?
Sure. I'll move to the second paragraph on page 2. A motion.
Which specifically says,
Shall a mechanism be created which will allow the community to investigate and independently determine whether a Clallam County public official has disobeyed or ignored the law?
is there a second for that motion? And the motion is that this question would be moved to the public hearing. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
I second.
Second by Noblin. Now there's discussion. Wow, such silence. Nolan?
I had one other, I was on that committee, and I had one other thing that did not get in here because we didn't have the information at the time. On item 6, the reference to Justice Restoration Clallam County, another organization also has brought us information, and that was the National Liberty Alliance. And we didn't take that up when we had our meeting, and that's probably not related to the discussion at hand, but there it is.
Hearing no discussion, does that mean you're ready to vote on this question? I guess so. Okay, so the motion in front of you is to move to the public hearing the question, shall a mechanism be created which would allow the community to investigate and independently determine whether a Clallam County public official has disobeyed or ignored the law? Those in favor?
Aye.
So I need hands, okay. Ron, is your hand up or not?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I need hands, so I got accused unless I'm not counting right, so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 9, 10. So that question moves to the public hearing, and I will add it to the questionnaire. Mike?
Oh, I still see a problem I've raised twice before. I mean, I get very
Okay.
far in, but
Okay.
if we would ask the prosecutor to research this and lay out for us the constitutional statutory framework in which prosecutors, ombudsman, grand jury operate, we may get a lot of information from folks that understand it or don't understand some of these concepts. And the 2 examples that I think Steve got from out of our state were quite different. And they probably won't see those, for instance. And so the burden back to this board, if we only have this without some kind of memo or something from the prosecutor, there'll be a lot of questions by our board. What did citizens mean?
So, do you have a motion to make as to a question you'd like to forward to the prosecutor?
If it's appropriate.
It's appropriate.
I mean, I just see the need, as I mentioned before, for the prosecutor to do a little more research. This one would be, for instance, looking at our Constitution and the statutes, looking at legal options, how do they fit in the framework?
Okay. So could you make that into a formal motion and then we can discuss it?
I move that we request the prosecutor to research under this concept language, to keep it small, the various options that could be covered by this. For example, ombudsman, charter enforcement commission, grand jury, and if in their office they know others from their own email list, to include those. And it could be maybe half a page.
Stop there.
Okay.
Don't make your motion too long because I can't repeat it. So, is there a second?
We already have a motion on the front.
No, we already voted on that motion. The
Second.
motion that Glenn raised, we already voted and approved to move to public hearing. So now Mike is making a motion as to what he wants to ask the prosecutor to investigate in order to find out how this could be implemented. So,
Are we for discussion on that?
Yes, because Dawn,
I
did you
did.
second? Okay, so Dawn seconded, so we're now open for discussion.
Well, I served on that committee, and one of the things that we discovered while we were talking about it was that we have 2 RCWs on our records that appear to make this grand jury thing not an option. So that's why we worded it this way. There would have to be another mechanism, and I am definitely in favor of having the prosecutor give us some direction, because we know our RCWs don't seem to support what we are trying to do.
Okay, Ron?
Well, I also was on the committee, and I have a similar question to Nola's, and I support Mike's motion to get these before the prosecutor. I think we hear the term from the public comments, grand jury. I don't hear the term citizens grand jury. And that is something that perhaps can be addressed later by those individuals, because my understanding, whether one likes it or does not like it, there are provisions in Washington State law that currently address grand juries. And so when we have another grand jury proposal, how is this one different than those that are already in Washington State statutes? I think we discussed at the committee that it might be kind of loose wording, I believe was the expression that we were looking at in that citizens grand jury proposal. We need to, I think we need to know more, and we need to know if the citizens, if this grand jury proposal is a citizens grand jury proposal. I think the prosecutor needs to look at that as to whether it is legal under Washington State constitutional law. It is under California law.
Well,
Any other questions?
this motion,
Microphone.
this motion will answer that question.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I supported it. That was my argument.
Any other comments? Hearing none, Mike, can you, for the record, restate your motion, or do you want me to have Trish read it and see if we got it right?
Does Trish want to try?
Okay, Trish, let's see what we have here before we vote on it. Make
Move
sure.
to ask the prosecuting attorney to research under concept language various options that could be covered by this, such as grand jury, ombudsman, etc.
Well,
Close? Or
not
or-
concept language, but under the constitutional and statutory framework, and then those options for charter enforcement, including ombudsman, grand jury, charter enforcement commission, and if they know of other options, include those for us.
Okay. Is everyone clear what the motion is?
Just not a bit.
Basically, yes. Before we vote, Ryan would like to have a word.
As a member of the prosecuting attorney's office, it would help if we can get some clarity as to the question that you specifically want to have asked. I would just note that the prosecuting attorney is unfortunately not one of your members, and if you're asking for the prosecuting attorney to propose options of what it may or may not be, that might not necessarily comport with this body. So if you can be specific as specific as you can, it will help with respect to the research and answering the question that you've asked. As an example of specificity, the definition of the county, or providing a specific case that you want to have us compare with an article, that provides us with a pretty good way to spring forward and start answering it. But if we start talking about constitutional, statutory framework, what statutory framework? The Revised Code of Washington in its entirety, it would be very, very helpful so that we can be of greatest assistance and utility to this body if you can help have a specific question that you can answer. Thank you.
Okay, Ron and then Glenn.
Well, yeah, as to specifics, the question that I would want answered by the prosecuting attorney is the document that's been prepared by Justice Restoration Clown County, and it's entitled Clown County Grand Jury Proposal.
And your question would be?
Is that legal under Washington State Constitution? Is that legal under the Washington State Constitution?
Okay, and Glenn?
I just wonder if it would be helpful if we just table this and have those that can draft a question that is clear. The clarity of that question is important for the timeliness of it and the answer. We have to have an answer to this question. Would it be good to have a specific question drafted by the attorneys that we have here during the break and bring something back that we can vote on?
Okay, Ken?
You know, I'm not sure even what's just been said now, although it makes sense on the surface, gets us anywhere, because we've heard everything from citizen grand juries to references to the U.S. Constitution's Fifth Amendment, which only provides for grand juries in the case of capital crimes and other
capital crimes.
What's that?
Federal
capital crimes and other infamous, notorious acts, which are usually things of severe violence. And what I've heard for the citizens grand jury suggests, if you got a neighbor whose dog won't stop barking, you could, have them indicted at a grand jury. I mean, I still don't have any idea what we're actually talking about here, so I don't see how we can ask any question of the prosecutor at this point. I mean, I have no idea what we're talking about.
I would just interject that I think it is critically important that if we want to, we can send questions to the prosecutor. I think they should be pretty narrowly defined. Because basically, they're supposed to give us legal advice, they're not our research arm.
Excuse me, but I guess that's my point. I mean, I'm not trying to diss what's being asked. I mean, in all honesty, the things we've been hearing from the public, I'm not clear what's being proposed. I read that document, and it didn't make it any clearer to me, to be honest. I mean, maybe that's the question. I don't know. I'm trying to understand what is being asked to be considered, but I don't have a clue.
All right, so Steve?
I think that's why I wanted to have the question for the hearing part be much more general, because what I'm hearing the citizens say, they want some type of accountability process that they can use if the current system isn't working correctly. And that could be a grand jury, that could be a lot of different things, but the question really isn't the mechanism, but do we need one? Is any type of mechanism that the citizens can go to when they feel their elected county official is not following the law?
Well, if it's that specific, that makes sense, but we've heard everything from no prosecutions will take place without a grand jury first, reviewing the facts and deciding to indict or not to. I mean, if it's just about maintaining accountability to elected officials, that's something totally different. But again, I'm not even sure you could have a grand jury with just that narrow a focus, could you? I mean,
Well, the motion that you just recently approved specifically talked about public officials. It was narrowly defined. And you can determine whether a Clown County public official has disobeyed the law. That was the motion that this body just passed to move to public. So, Glenn?
I kind of think it needs some clarity to go to the prosecuting attorney with a clear question. And I just wondered, in order to make the question clear, it seems like we're going to have some wordsmithing, which we can't do here. That I wonder if we can just table this until the next meeting, we have an answer for that, and have those that could volunteer to draft a motion, draft the language that we're going to ask the prosecuting attorney for. Seems reasonable. I don't think it should be loose so that he doesn't know what he's answering.
Just let know, I need to check with Rod about the tabling motion. I'm forgetting what precedent move to table takes.
Okay, is the motion to table? Yeah, okay. If he's made a motion to table, I think that's, if I remember.
Well, he hasn't made it, but I'm guessing.
Well, a motion to table, though, what he's saying is a motion to postpone, if he's using the phrase a motion to table. And those are different motions. And folks use the wrong words, like a motion to reconsider versus a motion to there's another word, amend or renew, which is probably what should have been anyway. But on this one, if he's wanting a motion to postpone to a date certain this question, then I think that would take precedence over the motion on the table, I believe. I have to look that one up. I'm sorry, I was trying to read the citizens grand jury one more time to understand which words you use, because I share Ken's.
I was just in the back of my memory bank remembering motions to table do take some kind of precedent. So, anyway, so are you making a formal?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table until we have some clarity.
But you have to table to a specific time.
Until the next meeting.
No, he can postpone indefinitely.
But tabling, you have to
Table, you have to deal with it at that meeting, because you're just setting it aside for now, you'll have to deal with it later in this meeting.
So,
yes, if you table.
do you, I think we're all getting a little bit confused about all this. Is it time to take a 5-minute break and people can start talking and maybe come up with some language, and we'll leave your tables aside and come back, leave this motion hanging, and we'll come back and discuss it and wording the motion. Do you want to withdraw the motion that's on the floor in order to introduce?
Right.
Okay, so Mike, that's your motion, you'll need to withdraw it.
Sure.
And who seconded?
I
John,
did.
is it okay?
Mike, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now we've withdrawn the motion and the seconder agrees. So Glenn, I understand you have some language for a new motion.
Right, I'll read it.
Okay?
The question of the prosecuting attorney is to bring clarity under existing law to the establishment of a grand jury process, an enforcement commission, an ombudsman process, or other ideas for those who violate the laws of Clallam County. So it's asking about all those processes to give us some clarity as to how, okay, this is not good. That's very inopportune.
Okay.
And
Is there a second to Glenn's motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Celinda. Discussion. Don?
Should there be some differentiation between grand jury and citizens grand jury?
I don't
Why?
think citizens was even brought up in the paperwork, we said that's something.
It's been spoken of multiple times.
But not in
And
this
there-
presentation.
And there's a difference, I believe, between citizens and also grand jury. At least if you look on the internet about that. And I would like to know the difference, I'm really not sure. So I'm just wondering, as a friendly amendment, if we could include citizens and citizen grand jury.
Sure.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, if you restate the motion, we'll then vote. Okay, all right, now go ahead, Trish, we'll wait.
Question to the prosecuting attorney is to bring clarity under existing law to the establishment of a grand jury process, including an enforcement commission or other ideas or ombudsman process for those who violate the laws of Clallam County.
You hear the word citizen.
I'm wondering if simpler language is to ask the prosecutor, what can legally, how can a citizen's complaint about elected officials' misconduct be done under Washington state law? Is that what we're looking for?
It's about so much
There's
more.
a motion and a second.
I know.
So that's not a motion.
No, I'm
for
not
second.
making a motion. I'm not making a motion. I'm just asking if that's a simpler question.
I guess my question, Madam Chair, is the chair debating, or are we, I mean, there's a motion and second about
Second's
their
on here.
motion.
And we're in discussion. We're discussing the motion. So I just am asking a question to make for the motion.
You're asking me a question?
Just say no.
I agree.
Yes.
No, I have it separate to say no. Okay.
I guess the comment that I had is our representative from the prosecutor's office said we needed something that was more limited, more concrete, and I think this is still a little too broad, but I could be wrong.
Could you speak to that?
That's what I was trying to see if we can narrow it.
Well, can we flush him out to have a
No.
comment?
All right, so I invite the prosecutor back to the podium.
As worded, I hope I'm not the deputy prosecuting attorney who's tasked to.
Is your career on the line, or?
No. You know, it's a question, right? Whether or not it can be timely answered is a completely different thing. And that's really all I can say. It's grand juries, without knowing as much as these fine gentlemen behind me and many at this body, it's going to be a complicated task. It's not going to be a one-page memo. I hope it's a one-page memo, but to inform this body about a brand new process, when perhaps no one in this room is necessarily as clear, it's going to take time to research. It's going to maybe take time to come back and make sure that we have the question figured out that will be of utility to this group. And really, I'm just speaking for myself, you know, whether or not one of my esteemed colleagues is put on the task of this, but you know, the question asked and the ramifications it might have, it's daunting. So, you know, just bear that in mind. But with respect to I mean, you have a question, and we'll see what we get from the prosecutor's office. But, you know, for my preference, and I'm just one person, greater specificity would be much appreciated. But I know that we're in an education, you know, we're trying to educate ourselves, and what does it mean, and how does it fit in our system. You know, we don't have much time. We'll do the best that we can, but if there are amendments or revisions that can be made, it might be helpful, but that's where I am.
Thank you. Ken?
Well, just listening to what the assistant prosecutor said, maybe this would be better served, and I do find it to be a really interesting question. I'm just really confused by it, just so everybody understands. But maybe we'd be better served by making this a recommendation to the county, that to the county commissioners, that they, you know, it's a complex issue. It's going to take a lot of staff time. Maybe we ask the county commissioners to ask the prosecuting attorney's office to look at a schedule for investigating all of the issues that surround this, maybe including engaging, you know, some community members on the topic, because it's, and bring it back at another time. It's such a complex issue. I just don't see what we can do.
Okay, Nola?
I would respectfully ask that we not relieve our responsibility and do that, but think in terms of it is going to be time consuming. Even if we give them a fairly specific request, that we don't have to have, we can do this kind of thing, move it into another election cycle, if I remember correctly. This may be an item that needs enough research and enough time for our prosecutor to research it, for us to not feel like it urgently has to go right now.
Glenn?
We've already had a motion that passed. This was to bring clarity to that. And since we can't bring clarity to that, and we have this motion that's passed to move it forward for a public hearing in the language that was suggested there, I wonder if we're just as well off to hear the public on this question and then decide at the end of the day how to proceed.
Does that sound like you're withdrawing your motion?
The previous motion?
The one you're looking at, we already voted on. No, the motion that we are now discussing.
Yeah, no, I could, hearing that from this attorney, I would say, yes, I withdraw the motion.
All
If
right.
the second,
The seconder was, who was the seconder?
I was the seconder.
You were the seconder. Are you okay with withdrawing the motion?
I think it's still a good question. I think we need more information. I mean, part of narrowing it down, it's like, well, but we don't have enough information yet to narrow it down. If we could get to that
Separated
specific
into
of a
3
question,
questions.
we probably already have the answers. I think it's a fair question that was asked. I stick with my second, whatever the term is.
All right, the motion's still active, Steve?
I have an alternative wording for that, if this would be the appropriate time or after, I'm not sure.
You can ask the maker of the motion to.
Okay, the alternative wording could be, does the Charter Commission have the authority to establish an enforcement mechanism to enforce county elected officials in relation to the charter, state, and federal law? That kind of drills it down to, regardless of the mechanism, do we even have the authority to do this?
Okay. So Glenn, that's suggested language to amend to your motion, which you didn't get to withdraw because your seconder wouldn't withdraw.
Sure, let's use that as the motion, that's fine.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You said elected officials in that suggestion. Wasn't the original question broader than that?
Yeah, we could.
It's Clallam County public officials.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Sue.
Yeah, we could make that public officials. That's
Clallam
fine.
County public officials.
Yeah.
You're right.
Ted?
Yeah. I'm opposed to the motion for the simple reason I don't think there's really any issue that we do have the authority to do this. The question is, what should we be doing? And what this substitute motion is just trying to get back to square zero and say, can we even consider it? And I think that's, from my reading of the charter, it's pretty clear that we can consider it, we can do it. I think we should instead focus on a particular item. I agree that the current question is too broad for the prosecuting attorney to seriously consider, but I think we should instead focus on trying to refine it into a question that we can submit to the prosecuting attorney.
Don?
One of the examples that's been brought up a couple times by our folks is the example of a state patrolman who has done some difficult kind of things with his car. And I don't think that that's really, we're not addressing their concern about that. They're not, the state patrol officer is not a county official or a county employee. I'm not, I think we're after, or at least if I'm hearing our friends out here, is that they're after a way to see if, is a citizen's grand jury something that is legal? And it seems like a simple question to our prosecuting attorney's offices. Is this proposal legal or is it not? And that would be very helpful for everyone to know. That's a simple thing.
Okay, so I'm losing track. So we had your original motion, and you want to withdraw, but your second withdraws, so it was there, and now you, Oh, you withdrawn. Okay, makes it cleaner. All right, so your motion, now your seconder agreed, so your motion has been withdrawn. So the table's clean. So we have Steve with an idea and Don with an idea, so who wants to propose?
My motion is that we request the prosecuting attorney's office to review the Clallam County grand jury's proposal as submitted on whatever date this is for its legality in Clallam County.
Moved by Don, is there a
I
second?
second that motion.
No, a second. Is there further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Sue.
What happened to the more inclusive ideas that Mr. Doherty proposed earlier as far as the question to go to the prosecuting attorney, including the commission idea and several others?
Well, those are all withdrawn from the table. You can, after this motion is voted on, you can introduce something else.
Has it been seconded?
Yes.
So I think
I second.
Any further discussion, Steve?
I didn't want to cloud it up, so I think this motion is good the way it is. It just talks about one specific thing.
Right.
And that might be simpler for the prosecutor to look at than a large thing that deals with ombudsman and enforcement commissions and all that. We'll just deal with this one thing, at least for now. The other ones aren't nearly as complicated in terms of our authority to establish.
Or meet the interest of our people.
Okay, I'll get you in just a minute, Nola. Anybody else weighing in on this? Okay, Nola, and then we'll vote.
When we were on that committee and discussing this, there were 2 RCWs that I think would make this a little more specific even at that. The ones that we were concerned about it fitting under were the RCW 2.36 and the 10.27. They seem to be related to grand juries and to grand juries, criminal investigations, and juries. So if we pinpointed it down to those 2 specific things, I think that would be a little easier for our...
It would seem to me that our prosecuting attorney office would be able to address that very directly as you have. So let them bring that, and we don't need to direct them anymore.
Oh, I just thought you wanted more clarity.
Oh, well, you just got it.
Okay, we are ready to vote. Restate your motion, please.
Trish, did you get that down?
Ask the prosecuting attorney to review the Clallam County grand jury proposal presented by Justice Restoration Clallam County for its legality.
Yes.
Those in favor of the motion? Raise your hand, please, so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? So that question will go to the prosecutor. Is there any other questions before we move on? Mike, do you want to readdress anything?
Well, I just think at the end of the day, we're going to be considering some other options, and the only one we've asked to have some research on is one. Again, I raised this since January. If we're going to be at the end of our time, and we're not going to have research, and other charter reviews have had a little more research. I see other parts, well, one thing I was going to suggest, and it isn't serious yet, but under Washington law, what are the optional methods of enforcement of the provisions of a home rule charter? And then we could list, including but not limited to, citizens grand jury, ombudsman, charter review commission. And leave it to the civil deputy prosecutors. If they know of some other, they have a network. They can email in minutes out to every department in 39 counties and say, what other options might there be that we can suggest to our home rule charter group? But,
Do you want to make that as a motion?
well, we've got a motion that
We just passed.
passed.
That's okay.
Which was narrowly defined as single question. All right.
I think what we're, I think the hesitancy to go down some of this road is that the prosecutor was very clear that we're, as a commission, we're not under them like you had not been used to as a county commissioner, as a representative, and we can't use them as a research wing for our commission. We have to do our own research or go to MRSC to see if they would be willing to help us. But he asked us not to use them as a research tool in this process.
Well, my recollection when the elected prosecutor was here, he invited us, if we had 8 members voting one way, to send them questions. We've got a lot of options raised by citizens, and there may be other fact-finding groups or forums, maybe Ted, Rod, maybe they will know, that might be used under Washington law. I'm not saying in Kentucky and Alabama, under Washington law. That's why civil deputy prosecutors are familiar with this sort of thing.
So we can move on, but before we do, last option, does anybody, do you have a specific
Well,
motion
initially
you'd
we'll
like
have
to
worked
make?
on one, and that's
Okay. And it sounds like there's a lot of interest, a lot of discussion. Is there any interest in having a subcommittee get together and work on even just, sounds like framing the question is a major job, and doing some homework on all the other options? Is there any interest in having any subcommittee?
Well, we still have the subcommittee on the enforcement commission concept.
Right.
We also
You
have
want-
the grand jury one.
Yeah.
Well, we can't combine the two though, because then we've got more than 7 votes.
And I don't think we're done as the subcommittee yet.
All right.
Because we might be able to form a question within
All
our
right.
subcommittee to
So
forward.
you're going to keep working. Okay. All right, anything else before we move on to the questionnaire that you have in front of you? No, the questionnaire. You're going to have the input on. Sue, you have an extra copy in there? One. Did mine go somewhere?
I really would like to see it put in another format, I think it's.
There's an extra. I got it. I got. Okay. All right. Comments? Ken?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend some several, what I think are very clear changes, and I'm just going to go through them quickly without all the words and lines, okay?
Okay.
I recommend that we delete 1, 2, and 3 and replace those with 2 distinct separate questions. The first one being, how many county commissioners do you believe would best represent county citizens? 3, 5, 7, or other? And so that would replace both questions 1 and 2. And I suggest rewriting question 3 to read, should county commissioners be elected by district in the general election period? Then I suggest we strike question 8 because it requires research, and the questions should be something people can react to quickly. And then I would suggest adding another question at the end that CCD director would better serve county citizens. And then finally, again, surveys should always be asked in the affirmative, so the order of response when they're yes, no, or other should be yes, no, not sure, or other. So those are my recommendations. Now, before I yield the floor, the thought on the first 2 is, I feel like I favor increasing the number of county commissioners to 5. Doesn't really include the people being surveyed and all the other discussion we've had. I think you need to ask a question that gets to the heart of the issue, which is representation. So that was my thought there. And then again, I think the issue of number of commissioners, we should just simply make that a checkbox with number of commissioners, and again, phrase that in the context of representing county citizens. So, and I think the rest of it's self-explanatory. So that's my 2 cents worth on something I don't believe in.
I would second that.
Okay. You
If that's a
formally
motion.
move that.
Sure, that's a motion.
Okay, so can you just keep it simple, and we'll come back to different things. So your motion is rewording 1, 2, and 3 in the way that you've talked about, correct?
Eliminate the 3 and replace them with 2 new ones. The first is, how many county commissioners do you believe would best represent county citizens? And then instead of yes or no, it would be 3, 5, 7, or other. And then so the first 2 questions are replaced with that new one. The third question is rewritten to read, should county commissioners be elected by district in the general election? I don't think asking it both ways makes sense. You should never ask a question either or. It should just be one or the other, and they're already elected in the primary by district. So I think the question should be clearer and succinct. So that was the thought there. And then.
So can we just leave it the commissioner thing, and then you can make another motion for other changes?
Okay,
It's easier.
okay, sure.
Okay.
So just do one at a time.
I mean, yeah, topics. So your motion is redoing 1, 2, and 3 in the manner that you mentioned.
Yes.
So Steve, you're seconding that motion. Okay, discussion?
I like the idea of the intent, as opposed to just numbers. Or I'm wondering if we could amend it to how many county commissioners does it take to change the light bulb? That was a good idea.
I didn't have that.
Is there any objection to, there's a motion on the floor in order to move things along, is there any objection to the kinds of changes that are proposed in this motion? Those in favor of the motion? All right. So Ken, I'll need to meet with you to get that done before 9 o'clock tomorrow.
I'll write it clearly
Okay,
in here.
now you had other.
The next thing was to strike question 8, just because I feel like it requires the survey to do research, and I don't think you can expect it. And they need to be questions that they can respond to at the time. Now, that's my research tells me that people won't answer if they don't know what they're talking about. So, I mean, the question asks, should section 1.20 of the charter change word cooperation to coordination? I mean, how are they going to answer that? So I just say strike it. And I think that's, you know, we understand that well, and we'll decide whether we want to move that forward or not. And then finally add, so that's a separate one.
Yeah, that's a separate one.
What's
Right,
second?
simple, we just-
Motion is to delete question 8.
Second.
Those in favor of deleting question?
Can I have discussion first?
Yes, ma'am. Go for it.
I oppose this because I'm thinking what needs to be done instead. There was a quote that came from that committee, but it was 4 or 5 lines long. But I think that should go here instead, so they can see the context.
We have space issues, so we can't have 4 or 5 lines per question, so.
Well, we could have used the format that I showed.
Excuse me,
I am opposed to that as well. And I agree with Nola that there should be the original language that was submitted. We have saved considerable space by combining 1, 2, and 3 into one question essentially, or 1 and 2 into one question, and shortened it thanks to Ken. So I think that we should leave that question in. It was voted upon and passed, and perhaps add the original language that came from out of the committee.
Okay. Seeing no further hands, those in favor, are you?
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm not sure number 8 tells us what we're asking, and I'm sure point doesn't help us figure out whether or not we want to do it. So I'm gonna vote against the motion just because I don't think it helps us one way or the other.
You know, I just want to emphasize, I mean, deleting the question from the survey isn't a commentary on the subject. I think we were almost unanimous on that. I just don't think it's a good survey question, and I think to elaborate on it doesn't make it a better survey question, it actually makes it worse. So I'm arguing simply from the perspective of having the best survey that we can, so I don't want anybody to think we're trying to...
So, things along, those in favor of the motion, which is to delete question 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 8. Okay, so we deleted 8.
The fourth thing was to add a question, do you believe an appointed professional DC?
Okay. Okay.
I'll make it a motion, just like Jeopardy.
Good. So that one, Ron, can go ahead and add both the questions we voted on.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That this space would fill up the 2 questions that we voted on tonight, the DCD and the one of Glenn's jury committee. So we have 2 questions to add.
Oh, yeah, that's, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
Okay.
Okay, well, I would suggest, I make a motion to add a question that asks, do you believe an appointed professional DCD director would better serve county citizens? And then, okay, so that's a separate thing. I had one last one. That's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Rod?
I'm gonna vote no. The wording of the question has a value judgment in it that's missing in all the other questions. So we're gonna do this, and do it when we have a full commission, because I noticed that the numbers of voted change based on who was in the room on what night. I would suggest that the question be, should the charter be amended to appoint to make the DCD position appointed by the commissioners? That removes the value laced in that wording that was put. So I'm gonna vote no against the motion.
Unless Ken is willing to adopt your language as amending this motion. Are you willing to accept Rod's language?
Well, let me think about this for a second. You know, to be honest, I mean, my first pass at this question was more direct like that. But I sort of feel like the survey is trying to measure the values of the community, quite honestly. And the motions we passed on the changes to the first 3 questions, I think view as our value statements. So I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't care. I was trying to make this question sound more like the phrasing changes I recommended for approving the first couple. So. Yeah, to me, it's about asking questions. If we make these changes, are you better served?
What?
Ted?
I think it's very important that the DCD question be in the questionnaire, but I have to agree with Ron. I think it's more value neutral, and I move to amend the motion so that Rod Fleck's promotion, proposal be,
Because he wants to amend the motion, so we're trying to find out if the maker of the motion will accept the amendment, or if we need to have a separate motion on amendment. So where are we? Are you asking Ken if he'll accept your
Well, let me see, I think
friendly
what you said,
amendment?
I think you recommended rephrasing the question to read, should the Clallam County Charter be amended to make the DCD director position appointed?
To amend it to appoint the director of the DCD by the county commissioners.
That's an important point. We're saying appointed, the people might wonder, appointed by whom? Czar, someone?
I accept that.
All right, so the maker of the motion's accepted the amended language. The seconder, I lost track of my seconder. Okay, you accept that?
Trish, did you get that?
All right.
Okay.
Should the charter be amended to appoint the director of DCD by the county commissioners?
Good.
Yeah, you have a comment?
I was just thinking, a simpler question could be, should the Department of Community Development be, and then have elected or appointed?
I don't think that would be a good survey question.
You don't think so?
No, I think there's two separate questions. I mean,
Okay.
I like the idea of that, though, if it requires two questionnaires.
Let's move to voting, vote up or down, Ken's newly amended motion. You all know what it is? Okay, those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So your new language, please, afterwards, let me make sure I get it just right.
Trish had it correct. I don't think I got it written down.
And then we need to also add the question that we approved to move to public hearing that came out of Glenn's committee. And that is always, that's already as written, right?
Right, as written.
Okay.
And then I have one last thing. I move that on the yes and no questions, that the order be, because the questions are asked in the affirmative, it should read, the option should be in the order of yes, no, not sure, or other. And that's how the questionnaire is. So that's a motion.
So yes comes before no?
Yes.
The second?
Second.
Okay, 10 seconds. That's a pretty simple request. I don't think we'll have a big discussion. Those in favor of just simply reversing the questions so that, the answers, so yes comes first, then it's no.
And include other.
And include other after not sure?
Right, and that was an Ed Bowen suggestion in our correspondence also. Actually, all of these should have other or a place to write in comments.
There is a place to write in all kinds of comments on the back page.
All right, that's it.
Okay, so those in favor of reversing yes, no, and adding other? 1, 2, that's, are you voting no? Okay, did you vote, Rod?
I vote yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay. All right, and then Glenn's question will get in there, and I'll lift that directly from what we voted on.
And I'll rewrite those first two words.
Yeah, thank you, that would be helpful. Any other comments? Yes, Mike?
So just practically, will the printers redo this? And could they put Nola's suggested way, have the boxes? So it would be much easier to tabulate. And it's much more distinctive when the person's voting, yes, no. Can the printer do that? So it doesn't take you all night.
Well, I wouldn't be able to do this way because I'm not smart enough on my computer to do it this way. But,
Well, I can have it
so-
ready for you in the morning and take off my stuff.
but I have a,
It's just done in Excel.
what I will do is I will take this, and have, as what we've just voted on, the language, and I'll take this format and ask if which way the printer can do it. I'm going to the printer at 9 and I'm leaving town at 10, so I have a real short window. And I might have to just, and the reason why we have to get this printer and get this started, as I say, is because both newspapers have deadlines as to when they need this. And as it is, we're really pushing the button to get this printed, because they told us it'd take 10 days and they're gonna try and crunch it up to So we have a very narrow window of getting that in, but I'll do my best. Okay, yes, Nolan?
I just wanted to make the comment that I think by doing this approach, originally I was not in favor of a survey, but I'm thinking by doing this approach and the wording that I've seen here, it will spark more interest in people coming to the hearings, which is what our hope is.
Right, that's what we're hoping. This is an education tool, along with the questionnaire. Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, we can move on to our agenda. I think we're about ready to cover comments. Is that right?
That's correct.
I don't know how tonight I'm getting all my papers lost, but. Okay, public comment next. 3 minutes. Has anybody signed up for the second round of public comments?
Oh, I will.
Sign again? What did I do? Oh, here it is. Right. Okay, so, Charles Crane?
My name's Charles Crane, North. I'd like to add, we apologize for going in such a slick hog this title. Don't let this thing keep you up nights. It'll all fall into place the more you look at it. As far as what it is and the legitimacy and the legality of it, the Fifth Amendment states in the grand jury is providing any document. It's important for every county to have one, because you don't have a federal grand jury in Massachusetts come to Cloud County to officiate somebody's complaint. Every county should have one. Cloud County. The other thing is I don't know so much about a lot of things here because it's really a deep subject. You have to look at the way other grand juries are set up and how they're administered. You have so-called federal grand juries, state grand juries, citizens grand jury, you can call it what you want, common law grand jury, not to be confused with common law jury. The Constitution provides explanation for all of this, and they go in accordance with moral laws that were set up in the beginning. I also wanted to make a point, when I left you information about NLA, National Liberty Loans, that is a separate group of East Coast people who are very diligent doing what they're doing. We are not associated with them in any way. We're just trying to establish a people grand jury in Cloud County. So there's a lot of work to be involved and to learn about and to be discovered. And maybe not any of us would ever be jurors. We just want to promote the justice benefit in getting it started because it has fell by the wayside. It has fallen way by the wayside. In fact, if you wanted to, say, use a grand jury to get your complaint heard, good luck getting into a federal grand jury to say, my grandmother's been making me do something illegal every weekend and I want to know why. Well, that's a joke, but basically, federal grand juries would let a guy off the street come in and make a complaint about something. It took 2 years for this bulldozer incident to get settled in a civil court. That should have been a judgment hand down right away. If there's any lawyers in this room, and I think there are, they should know what the Fifth Amendment is. It provides for a grand jury. So with that, I just want to say, stay with it, keep looking at it, but that's your answer. It's by all means legal and legitimate, and I urge you to go forward. Just present it to the people and let them get involved. It will create a great deal of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Yes. So I'm not talking about the grand jury. This is regarding the BCD director, and it seems to me, again, it's very simple. Why would you want to have a person that you can't recall? You may like the effort that, the people that sit as county commissioners that you elected, but do you know that he will appoint a good, competent person? many times is that appointing someone becomes, I owe you something? How do you know that the commissioners, two of them, would collude to appoint someone that they can control? Drives me crazy. It helps prevent cronyism. If you have the option to set the standards for the position, I sure would recommend maybe that. But then again, I've mentioned this before, there's no standards on the presidency, so other than some age, etc. Let the voters decide who's the qualified person. That person running for that office goes through so many debates and things, etc. People will decide. So my question to you is, do you trust the voters? They voted for you. I trust the voters. Voters can also get rid of the ineffective DCD director. They did this last time, and so can the commissioners. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody who didn't sign up who wants to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment. We're on to good of the order. I have actually two things to present for the good of the order. I received a press release, and the Clown County League of Women Voters is going to host, prior to each of our public hearings, a meeting in the same location. And it will be a discussion by Lindsay Schwarm-Warren, who grew up in Port Angeles, now works as a constitutional law and civil rights attorney. And what he's going to do is just talk about how the Clown County Home Rule Charter fits within a system of state, local, and federal law and holds a special place as our local constitution. So it's just a general information format that they're inviting people to come prior to the hearing. They want to know some of how all of that works together. And it will be held on Forks. And anyway, it's in the same meeting hall that we're in, but just an earlier hour. Like in Squim, it'll be at 4:30. And hopefully you'll see, and in Forks, it's going to be
not in
at
the same location.
Forks, it's Forks City Hall.
Yes, and
Right.
there, if the chair would recall, there was an email to her, and I believe, if nothing else, for the Charter Review Commission to be there, because there's another meeting right before that.
Okay.
And I'm always amazed with someone presuming by another organization that they have my government's use of the hall without them contacting me. But the league does its own thing.
No, they were supposed to make their contacts. So maybe they're holding it somewhere else.
I don't know. I
read this.
didn't check this morning, but last week when I got called to schedule the room, I specifically said there's a meeting there from 5, unless this is the Juanita who scheduled that. There's a weird note, and we couldn't track who was in there. It might be the
It
league.
says the league sponsor presentation will precede the commission hearings at 5 o'clock in Forks.
It could be.
So that's the meeting preceding our time.
It could be.
Because the people.
No one knew who it was.
Okay. Well, the people and the league told me that they called all these different places and made their own arrangements. So, unfortunately, I don't have a contact name on this list, but I can get one for you, Rod.
That'd be nice, because we couldn't figure out who this person was, and it didn't say what the topic was either. That's the interesting thing.
Oh, okay. Well, here, let me pass this
So.
down. It's a press release, but it's interesting that it doesn't have contact information. Okay. So the second thing is that the Clown County Democrats have monthly informational meetings, and they would like the Charter Review Commission to be the topic on Wednesday, June 10th, 6 to 7:30 at the Democratic headquarters in downtown PA. And they would like to ask if anybody on the commission wants to come. They would like to hear a variety of views. So they know that you can't have a quorum. So I can take 6 volunteers if anybody wants to show up. Was anybody interested in being part of that program?
What's the date?
Right there. What's the date on it?
June 10th.
June 10th. Does anybody here want to come and discuss it?
I unfortunately, I'm unavailable that evening.
Okay.
I'll go.
Huh?
I'll go.
All right. All right, so Linda Nola and Steve. Anybody else? Nola? Okay.
Where was that again?
It's, here's the note right here. Give you time, date, location. Okay, so that's my two good of the orders. Okay. Now, good of the order. Don, you have anything? Celinda? Barb? Sue? Ted? Nola? Hi? Ted? No, you're not Ted, you're Ken. Okay, Glenn? Ron?
I will just, it's not good in the order. I may have to leave the hearing reports early. I'm trying to catch a plane to the East Coast at 4 in the morning, so on the 2nd.
All right, hearing no other, we will then consider ourselves adjourned. We did well towards 9. We're adjourned